Finding ways to be financially savvy is a smart move, and knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream home or new ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card.
I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and this is our first episode of 2026 as we are recording on Tuesday, January 6, 2026. Kicking off our 13th season podcasting about the Chicago White Sox. Man, long time. And Sox Machine actually turns 20 years old this year. So it'll be exciting times for us in 2026. And hopefully the Chicago White Sox will be exciting too. But whether you are brand new to Sox Machine or you've been listening to us all the way back to the Southside Sox days, thank you as always for sticking around. It means a lot to us. In this episode, we're going to have some White Sox prospect talk as our James Fegan wrote up the top 37 White Sox prospect list for FanGraphs.com, and also joining us later will be prospect writer Eric Longenhagen to break down the White Sox current farm system, why Caleb Bonemer is the White Sox #1 prospect, what improvements do we need to see from Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith in 2026, and which prospects are James and Eric more optimistic than other analysts. Some White Sox news in case you missed it over the holidays. Former top 100 prospect outfielder Jared Kelenic has signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox. We'll see what improvements Kelenic has made, as 2025 was a season he'd like to forget, but as we all know, the White Sox need outfield help. Right now, the Charlotte Knights don't have much of an outfield, so if Kelenic doesn't make the major league roster, he is out of options. If he clears waivers, would he be willing to play for the Charlotte Knights? At least to start 2026, we'll see. Maybe Kelenic balls out during spring training and makes the opening day roster. Old friend Danny Mendick is now going down the coaching route as he just accepted the managerial role with the Charleston Riverdogs. That minor league affiliate is part owned by Mike Veeck, Bill Veeck's son. Mike came up with the idea of Disco Demolition Night, and he was featured in the Netflix documentary The Saint of Second Chances. So a few White Sox ties for Charleston this upcoming season. SoxFest Live is 24 days away and will be hosted again at the Remova Theater in Chicago on January 30th and 31st. January 30th is reserved for White Sox season ticket holders. And if you're a non-season ticket holder for the Chicago White Sox, Saturday, January 31st will be your day to attend, as you can purchase tickets right now at removachicago.com. For those seeking autographs, it's recommended that you buy VIP passes to meet White Sox players and coaches, as they won't have autograph lines at the Remova Theater. You can get more information about SoxFest Live at whitesox.com/SoxFestLive. And continuing our old friend updates, Sunday Night Baseball is shifting from ESPN over to NBC for a network that hasn't called baseball games in years. According to Front Office Sports, NBC is approaching former White Sox announcer, now Detroit Tigers announcer, Jason Benetti for that role. Nothing has been confirmed yet, but Benetti is calling multiple sports for Fox. He is Fox's third-ranked play-by-play broadcaster for baseball, behind Joe Davis and Adam Amin, who calls Chicago Bulls games. Taking the NBC gig would put Benetti more in the national spotlight, and with NBC home of the Olympics, with the Winter Olympics in 2026 and the Summer Olympics in 2028, maybe Benetti would be calling Olympic baseball in Los Angeles.
Thinking about trying a GLP-1 medication but worried about side effects? Start small with the Noom GLP-1 microdose program. It starts at $99 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes. Big results. Noom microdose GLP-1 RX program includes GLP-1 specific dietary and wellness education, regular user reporting, and personalized lower dosages through SmartDose. Lower doses of GLP-1 resulted in lower chances of observable side effects based on a sample of 9,528 microdose GLP-1 RX program users.
The Lowe's Closeout event means the final savings of the season are here. It's your last chance to get deals on seasonal decor, tools, flooring, and so much more. Refresh your home, check off your project list, or simply stock up on the brands you trust. Shop now to grab amazing deals before they're gone. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 1/7. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Joining the Sox Machine podcast to break down the White Sox top prospects and share their thoughts about the White Sox individual prospects in the farm system and top free agent signee to date so far for the White Sox, Munetaka Murakami, is, of course, James Fegan, beat reporter for SoxMachine.com and also contributor over at FanGraphs.com, and also Eric Longenhagen of FanGraphs.com. Eric, welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here again on a sunny Tempe, Arizona day, which is sort of all we get.
I was just going to say, it's always sunny there. I wanted to ask you, Eric, as far as in the free agent signing aspect for the Chicago White Sox this offseason, caught us by surprise, but the White Sox signing one of the top power hitters in Japan, Munetaka Murakami. What do you make of this signing for the White Sox?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unquestionably a good thing, even though Murakami comes with like substantial risk that he's not going to hit. Just his contact track record the last 3 or so years in Japan is just what it is, and there aren't any like good, consistent big league players who swing and miss this much. But if you can tweak something or, proves to get to enough power to be a valuable player, then you've got a contributor to your team, and you've, I think most importantly of all, sort of planted a bit of a flag culturally in Japan. Like, I really think that is as interesting and valuable a thing to come along with this signing as, anything Murakami might do on the field. Like, there are lots of players who have absurd power like this and who don't make enough contact to really do anything. They're like the quad A type guys who end up going to Japan. And some of those guys, the Vladimir Valentines of the world, do have years like Murakami's had at peak, but most of them don't, like, not to this degree, not really. The Willie Mopeñas of the world. But yeah, I think like this is a worthy gamble. His market came in way, way under what we thought it would be. Not because we thought that surely every team's thinking that this is the next, great superstar from Japan. No, like, this is a risky player. We knew that. But the fact that the entire market, it seemed, was apprehensive about this guy's ability to make enough contact did surprise me. I thought that we at least would have like a few bidders who took the value of this deal up into like the 9-figure territory. And so the White Sox are the beneficiary of the fact that didn't happen. This is an opportunistic gamble. And I think, for sure it comes with risk that this guy's just not going to hit enough to be anything at all. That might be the likely outcome even. Again, just like based on how his contact performance has been to this point, but it doesn't mean it's a bad deal. And it's encouraging just to see the White Sox open the checkbook up at all.
The Bat X, which I wrote about those projections at SoxMachine.com. So podcast listeners, if you didn't get a chance, you can go to Sox Machine. I broke it down and provided my thoughts. You could also check out the Bat X projections on FanGraphs.com. Eric, a 37.5% strikeout rate is projected for Murakami. And I wrote, that's unfathomable. Like, if it gets anywhere close to that in his rookie campaign with the White Sox, I have to imagine there might be a, you know what, Murakami, you're pretty sore right now. Let's put you on the injured list. Let's send you down to Arizona and let's work on some things, because I just can't imagine a major leaguer getting a long leash with that high of a strikeout rate.
Right, yeah, like if you just sort the FanGraphs leaderboard, like go to the leaderboard and sort the contact percentage, and the guys who are at the bottom of it are some of them are great. Like Aaron Judge is down there, and Shohei Ohtani is down there, and even some big league players who are flawed, you know, the O'Neal Cruzes of the world, who are tooled out enough to be productive anyway. Like that's where they live. And then below that is the area of guys where, no, it just naturally is not enough contact for this to be a useful player. We're talking about, you know, late career Joey Gallo and, you know, Franmil Reyes and stuff like that. And so there's absolutely a risk that this guy's going to be in that territory. Like it might be. I think that like the needle to thread is it's okay to be excited about the signing, even though you have level-headed expectations for how it might go. But it's hard to get that perspective exactly from the team. Like the team is going to want the fan base to be as hyped up as possible, as, you know, for a number of reasons. And so when he does strike out like 35% of the time, like if he hits a $190 but still has like 30 bombs or something like that, you know, that's the player that you paid for. That's like what this guy's deal expects him to be. And so that should be okay. But if relative to the hype, there's discontent in the fan base around it because he's being billed as, well, this guy, you know, is the Japanese Babe Ruth or whatever insane thing people want to say, well, then it might be a PR problem for you later on. So this guy's market was what it was. He comes with risks. He is going to strike out a ton. There's still productive players, the Mark Reynolds types of the world, like, you know, Russell Branyan. There are ways to Jack Cuss. Like that might be what this guy is. And that's still better than what the White Sox have kind of had, and would be an upgrade if, you know, he rips 35 bombs. If he's hitting like 200, like, okay, that sounds all right. And that's all right is like what he's being paid to be.
Well, it'll be fun. Hopefully, if he does tap into the power, and if he does cut down that strikeout rate, maybe he'll be better than expected for the White Sox. Better than expected is a good way to segue into the White Sox farm system. And James, you wrote about the White Sox prospects for FanGraphs.com. And when you look at the top 37 prospects, and what I've always loved about your rankings on FanGraphs, Eric, with the future value, that helps a lot. Where other lists, you see top 30 lists, and it seems subjective, but here with the future value, it is sorted out by grade. And to see 6 prospects, James, with a 50 future value grade, that's promising, right? Like this means that the farm system is getting better for the White Sox.
Hopefully, because like what you want is impact. I mean, this was a list that I did mostly myself, at least as far as like the writing. You know, obviously the grades got reviewed, but it's probably like the second full list I've done. So I think I would say that there's for sure like a safe 40. Everyone would see these 50 FV, and then the ones I kind of stretched for was kind of responding to the stuff of McDougal and Opper and being optimistic a little bit for different reasons on both of them going forward. Just McDougal looking like, one, it's betting that like just his frames and actions, that it's not going to and also strike throwing history, that it's not going to kind of back up into being a reliever. And whether, you know, he throws 100 right now, but it's always been like downhill playing and not played as high as his velocity in terms of like bat missing. His breaking balls do great. Like they seem like they're playing up from that as a result, probably overplaying like what their actions look like on camera a little bit. But it's if he settles into a band of where he's maybe, you know, 95, 97, does his fastball play a lot closer to average or maybe even slightly below in a rotation? And that's kind of a risk I'm taking a little bit, maybe overreacting a little bit to a guy who obviously finished the season looking awesome, and not necessarily the long track record of him looking that awesome over full seasons before. And Opera was a lot of both being optimistic that he'd found breaking ball that worked for him because he's kind of a natural pronator coming up, and really buying into, and Eric's what he saw in his delivery kind of probably gave me a little extra nudge to stick with the 50 that I was floating out there. Someone who still isn't throwing like a ton of strikes just yet, certainly not with secondaries, but has the kind of athleticism in his delivery that as the way things have started trending since he's added strength, kind of buying on him to keep building on it. So yeah, I think in terms of like seeing improvements for these two prep arms that looked very erratic, especially close to draft day, that would bode well for them just as organizationally. And I was trying to, especially with this list, kind of isolate the feeling that this was top heavy more than like a larger, huge like flood of prospects like for their rebuild like 7 or 8 years ago. They just made so many trades that gave the system a kind of a false sense of depth. Trying to isolate the impact here, but yeah, I think if it holds true, and if I'm right, then they do have a lot more kind of maybe frontline or impact looking talent than we've seen even in past incarnations when they were trying to build up their group. So hopefully it bodes well. Yeah, but I though, like, I could give quibbles about the the other four guys we got. Like, I think Braden Montgomery is kind of a guy who his tools are so good, his makeup's so lauded, he's produced to this point. You're kind of waiting for him to get better a little bit and assume he will, just because like he's such a great athlete, even though they're like, for a college player who's played at the highest level, he's still a little bit unrefined. There's still a lot more like swing and miss in the zone. Both where the level he's doing it and the age he's doing it at, that would probably give you a bit more pause if he, didn't seem like someone who just like has this obvious like outlier physical upside. And obviously Smith and Schultz had like kind of backup years where we're weighing how much to hold, how they looked for a lot of 2025. How much we should really hold that against them, given that Schultz has been a very good strike thrower from an outlier frame until he got hurt this past year. And Smith looked amazing his junior and looked pretty solid at the end of the AFL, but we saw this long stretch where he wasn't throwing anywhere near the strikes of a typical 50 FV starter prospect. So yeah, I think there's maybe a bit more. I don't know if that's a regular level of uncertainty for 6 50 FV guys, but I think there's certainly some baked in there, even while it's exciting on its own, that these guys will have kind of physical tools where you can see that kind of impact.
Well, just like the rate of success for the players in that future value tier. So, we're talking about the players who on like a top 100 list are anywhere from like the 50 to 100 range, or the way we do it at FanGraphs, like the depth of a class might make the 50 FV tier go down to like 112 guys. It's not always a nice round number. There are a bunch of players like beyond prospect 100 who are like about as talented as the guy who's prospect 80, or about as likely to succeed or not as the guy at prospect 60. That's like Craig Edwards' empirical research from, I don't know, like going on 10 years ago now, about like the hit rate of prospects on Baseball America lists going back like 30 years. And it's basically like a 50-50 shot for any of the 50 FV guys to actually have a long career, like let alone perform to the level that we are projecting with that grade, which is like, a 50 is average. And when we say average, we mean the average of like the top 30 guys at a given position. So like player, third baseman number 12 through 18 or so. Okay. Like those guys are 50s. And that grade of player is like a 2.5 WAR annual player. And it's a sort of player who you feel good about playing every day or fitting in, a contending team's rotation. And I agree that like this group at the top of a half dozen guys, they all have the ability to do that. And they're essentially ranked here in like the order with the degree of confidence with which that we think that they can, I think, attain that. Caleb Bonemer is first because he feels like the most stable. We value hitting, and that skill really spearheads his his profile in a way that makes him feel stable. He's going to hit enough to be a good player. And then, yeah, after that, I mean, I don't think the Christian Opper thing is like, it's only bold when you were comparing his grade here to like the general online zeitgeist consensus about this guy. Like, nothing really to do with his skills. I mean, it's a lefty whose delivery looks right, who touches 100, who is still only the age of a college prospect. You know, like, where does Christian Opper go in last year's draft if you drop him in? Like, his stuff isn't all that different than Cade Anderson. His stuff isn't all that different than, you know, Tyler Bremner. His stuff is arguably better than the kid from Oklahoma whose name is escaping me because I'm getting
Kyson
old.
Witherspoon.
Like, Kyson Witherspoon. Yeah, I was conflating him and Kason Cunningham, and I was like, that's not right.
Yeah.
That's Kason.
I did that all last year. Yes.
Yeah, and you know, Opper is he like a risk from a strike throwing standpoint? Sure. But you know, there are plenty of Adrian Morehone plays a key, like, is pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, so if that's what Christian Opper becomes, where he never throws enough strikes to really start, he might have, in the same way Morehone did, a couple of years where things are sort of frustrating before he finds his footing in like a dominant, sometimes multi-inning bullpen role. But like, that's what might happen with this guy. And I think that's, you know, justifies placement like this. And then, you know, guys like Tanner McDougal too, like, there's a good chance Tanner McDougal's just a reliever, but in October, I kind of like having a guy who throws 102. Like, if you want to win a World Series, you know, it's nice to have Jose Quintana at age 38, and he's still like a nice piece, and his WAR number at the end of the year might be bigger than a guy like Tanner McDougal's because he threw, you know, 170 innings. And that's great, and that's valuable in other ways. But like, you want to win a World Series, having Tanner McDougal come in and slam the door on the other team's 3, 4, and 5 hitters, like, that's a thing that you can envision because of the quality of his stuff. And I think that's the sort of thing that we're looking for when it comes, you know, to the back of this 50 FV group, like prospect, you know, number 100, 120, somewhere in there. It's good to have someone like McDougal. And two things make farm systems deep: trades like the Orioles have made, where it's just like, give us 5 guys. Like, here's Dylan Bundy. Give us 4 guys. Here's, you know, let's trade with the Padres and get 8 guys. Padres don't care. Like, let's go. And that's how you make a farm system deep, and then through player development. And this has obviously been a team that's rebuilding. And so this system doesn't have the depth of a team that's like rebuilding, like the Rays rebuild, like the Orioles rebuild, like some of these, you know, the Nationals have tried to rebuild, where it's, you know, let's go wide and apply good player dev and see what happens. This is more like, hey, they're picking good guys. Like Caleb Bonemer can hit. They picked a good player to pay the way they did in the draft. And Noah Schultz, like, hey, it has been up and down, sure, but not in a way that's any different really than like most teenage pitching prospects who you draft coming out of high school. Like, he's tracking okay, and it seems fine. And so they're sort of in that area. I think when your Rule 5 pick is a top 10 prospect in your system, like, it's not a deep system.
Got it. So with Bonemer, and I did like your explanation, Eric, why he is the number 1 prospect for FanGraphs for the White Sox. And James, you alluded to the idea, like, as far as his future position, he'll play shortstop this year in the minor leagues, but very doubtful that he's going to be playing shortstop in the major leagues. Is this the season where maybe Bonemer plays the first half of the year at shortstop, but as White Sox fans, and we're going to have this debate, if Chase Maidra doesn't improve upon an 85 weighted runs created plus, if White Sox fans do not want to see Lenyn Sosa with a fielding glove at all anymore because of his poor defense, and if Sam Antonacci doesn't come up and doesn't look like a better version of Chase Maidra, the question is going to be, who do we got at second base that could step in? Is that the path for Caleb Bonemer and his future with the White Sox? Could he help at that position?
It's the one I like the most. He's not even probably going to like play shortstop every day. To start out the season, he'll probably halftime and at third base to start out. I mean, he kind of ceded to Kyle Lodi's when they both were at high A together, and I think he'll be in pretty similar situations throughout the chain. And looking at him, like I think one of like he's a bigger and like stiffer athlete than you probably see at shortstop in general. But one of the things like I thought was what needs improvement for him is like his throwing arm. His arm action is a little funky and long and inconsistent. So I think that would be pretty like maybe he works that issue out playing more third base this season a little bit and we see improvement. But the immediate like not knowing what the depth path for that type of answer is, like, well, this guy below average range, but good hands enough to stay on the dirt. Throwing arms questionable. I'd put him at second, and certainly think his bat plays there and be confident about it. The Sox have talked a little bit about not to him, but like a possibility as he goes out to left field at some point, which seems like it'd be fine. I wouldn't have like above average expectations there, but the idea that he could stick there, speculatively seems all right. It's a bad first profile for sure, and I think he like. Cleo Bonemer playing like first base in his 30s, like that doesn't sound crazy at all. Maybe that even something that works down the road, but I think at this point he's playing enough to, his handwork his glove work is good enough to dream on him on different infield spots, and I imagine they chased it a little bit, but shortstop is more of like, I think ideally if he's making like an all-star game, like because his power has popped a little bit more than even like we see right now. It's because like, hey, do you remember this 25 home run guy used to be a shortstop in high school? I think it's probably going to be more of that level than something you see him play in AAA even.
Thinking about trying a GLP-1 medication but worried about side effects? Start small with the Noom GLP-1 microdose program. It starts at $99 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. New microdose GLP-1 RX program includes GLP-1 specific dietary and wellness education, regular user reporting, and personalized lower dosages through SmartDose. Lower doses of GLP-1 resulted in lower chances of observable side effects based on a sample of 9,528 microdose GLP-1 RX program users.
If you're the purchasing manager at a manufacturing plant, having a trusted partner makes all the difference. That's why, hands down, you count on Grainger for auto reordering. With on-time restocks, your team will have the cut-resistant gloves they need at the start of their shift. And you can end your day knowing they've got safety well in hand. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
So moving over to Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, Eric, what's one thing that you need to see from both in 2026 to give you more confidence that they're going to be ready for the major leagues? Because I think Chris Getz, ready or not, Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, Chris Getz needs you pitching in Chicago at some point in 2026.
Yeah, I think that Schultz definitely, you want to see him push aggressively if things are going better. He's an end of 2026 40-man timeline guy. He's absolutely the sort of prospect who should come up, towards the end of the year when you can retain his rookie eligibility into 2027 while also having given him like a nice, venti cup of coffee at the big league level just for him to get his feet wet. You just give yourself the best chance of like getting a draft pick for his performance in 2027 if you time it that way. And Smith is on, his natural timeline, independent of his performance, is also, like as a year following that, where he's post 2027 40-man ad. Smith obviously, like, can he throw strikes like he did in the Arizona Fall League? Now, some of it is like, it looked like this guy was throwing strikes in the Fall League because nobody else was really throwing strikes in the Fall League. It was like crazy maddening to watch. And what is going to be Hagen Smith's weapon against righties? In the Fall League, that was backdoor slider, elevate a fastball. That's how I'm going to attack these guys. And it worked. Like, he can land his breaking ball for strikes. It has more of a curveball look when he does it, but it's just like, it bites so hard. It freezes a lot of guys. They're standing there taking strike one and then, have to decide if they're getting a back foot breaking ball or an elevated fastball once they've fallen behind in the count. And that was a really, really effective way for Hagen Smith to navigate the Fall League. So can he do that against upper level hitters and big league hitters, or does he have to develop a third pitch, something with some arm side action, like a changeup or a splitter that he uses more than he has? One of those two things needs to happen, and hopefully stay consistent with the strike throwing the way he was in the fall. And then for Schultz, it's which slider is the real slider? Is it the slider from 2024 that played like an elite pitch? Or is it the slider from 2025 that played more like an average pitch? Why did this happen? Was, is this a thing that they have a preconceived notion about how they can correct it? Or are we just sort of groping around for a solution to come naturally? And if indeed it's the latter slider, if it's this, 33% miss and chase slider from 2025, is that because, hey, his fastball was so vulnerable the year before that we had to find a way for this guy to get ahead of hitters. And so we've leaned on his slider more as a way of getting strikes rather than finishing hitters. And does he stick with this approach if that's the case? And what kind of pitcher does that lead him to be? But for now, I know that his timeline to be a big league pitcher, period, is what it is, Noah Schultz. But his timeline to be awesome is still deeper than that. It's okay if Noah Schultz comes up and is bad for a little while. Go look at Tarek Skubal's first couple of years in the big leagues. Go look at the early career results for some of the guys who we know over time became really, really good. It is okay if you come up and get bombed for the first full year you're up, for the first year and a half, 2 years you're up, especially if your team is rebuilding. It is just a common thing, and it's something I would expect Noah Schultz is going to deal with growing pains at the big league level. It's still more of a long-term play for the next 3+ years, rather than something like, okay, we have Randy Johnson now, right? No, I mean, speaking of guys who took time, but no, yeah. It's gonna take time for most of this group, I think.
Yeah, that's the only historical comp that we have, though, right? For Noah Schultz is Randy Johnson. This has been my fear, Eric, ever since the White Sox drafted Noah Schultz. Is immediately people are like, he's the next Randy Johnson. And it's we need to calm down right now. To compare a Chicagoland high schooler to what? Maybe the best left-handed pitcher of my lifetime? That's a bit crazy, and I've been hoping that everyone's been pumping the brakes a little bit. But, I mean, that's it, right? All we got is Randy Johnson as a historical comp for somebody as tall as Noah Schultz.
And there are other super tall big leaguers who are in that, 6'8" and up territory. Doug Fister's coming to mind. You know what I mean? Very few of them are left-handed. Chris
Young was that tall too back in the day.
Right. Yeah. Texas Rangers GM Chris Young, for sure. There are, John Rauch and guys like this were enormous. So, right. John Rauch, I'm not overestimating how big he was, right? Yeah. 6'11", 290.
Huge. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, there are guys, I think that just, I would apply the label really freakishly tall pitcher to Noah Schultz without getting too bogged down in the minutia of exactly how tall he is. But yeah, he's a freak. I think he's a freak in a positive way. And let's just see how this plays out over time rather than super duper wrap ourselves in the growing pains and assume that the way he trended in 2025 is a permanent thing.
When I was doing the draft write-ups for Hagen Smith that year, Eric, the comp that I had for Hagen was Robbie Ray. Is that still a possibility for Hagen Smith if things click for him?
Yes, I think that's what it looks like if things go well, and Asa Lacy is the comp if things go sideways on him. That is the one where it's just does this feel like that? And at times during 2025, it was just it kind of feels that way. But yeah, Robbie Ray, where it can be frustrating, but ultimately his stuff is bonkers. I feel like I think that's responsible and positive.
Well, speaking of Texas A&M, James, let's chat about Braden Montgomery. As we had, when Jim Callis came on to talk about their top 30 White Sox prospects, what he was hearing is that there seems to be a little bit more confidence in Braden's ability to bat right-handed. And when I wrote up as far as his draft profiles, that was a risk that I had. I believe in the left-handed swing. That's where the majority power is going to be. But this could be a Yohan Makata situation for White Sox fans, in which when Braden Montgomery is facing left-handed pitching, I just don't know how much power and how much consistency there is from the right-handed swing for Braden Montgomery. Has that been improving since he's been in the White Sox farm system?
He's been performing. It's certainly kind of the stance of maybe people in his camp that like he just simply need. I mean, I think everyone would say he would simply need reps, and but there were reasons he was getting like exceptionally even beyond like game action, like not as many right hand swings at Texas A&M. That seemed to be largely addressed in pro ball, and you know that's where most of his power output really came from. Or a slight majority this season is right-handed. I think it's still a little bit more unrefined, and certainly for somebody who's swinging missing in the zone as much as he is, it's another like place to improve. But as far as like him having plus power from that side, I think he pretty much addressed that was what he was able to do this season. So I certainly, it's not the kind of top line item concern for him going forward that I would have held it as coming into this year. It's more just like this guy swings 300 miles an hour. It looks really great when it connects. There's like not as much like variability in what he's able to do in the hitting zone as you'd expect for someone this experienced, this productive. But he's also like so tooled up, for it's not a one-to-one comparison, but like the timeline for him to be awesome, as you could say, is similarly long, just because like this is a phenomenal athlete. So the room for him to figure things out, because he is going to hit the ball pretty hard. He is probably going to play pretty good. Like I think he's a right fielder, but I think he will add some value there and certainly not take anything off. So I think like his toolkit kind of provides a window for that in a way that, maybe outlier frame or big velocity provides a window for pitchers.
Would end of 2026, Eric, be too aggressive for Braden Montgomery to reach Chicago?
I don't think it's necessarily too aggressive for him to get there, but I think given the situation that they're in organizationally, that it should be a priority for them to play with the margins of their roster on like waivers and rather than accelerate Montgomery's timeline just for its own sake. I'm mindful that it's been a while. I think you guys, have been rebuilding, and people should at some point grow impatient, and you can't just have this kick the can down the road mentality the entire time. And if Braden Montgomery kicks the door down and is obviously one of the best, 20 guys in the organization in 2026, then sure, they should go for it. But for now, this is a guy who should be going on the 40-man post 2027. And you should use the time between now and then to try to find who is the Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Chris Taylor scrap heap. Who are their scrap heap guys who help spearhead a real contending team? I think that using the margins of your roster in that way, who falls away from the Mets because they're impatient, who falls away from the Phillies because they're impatient, try to find those guys with those roster spots over the course of the next 2 years, rather than just say, hey, Braden Montgomery's famous and him performing will dictate whether or not we keep our jobs. So if he gets there, maybe we will. No, I don't think you should do it that way. When we got the itinerary for the chat, Josh, I looked, in synergy at Montgomery splits in college and relative to now from both sides of the plate, and just, crude contact metrics here. But Montgomery was a 75% contact rate hitter, left-handed in college. That's in 2023 and 2024 combined. Cape Cod, all that stuff, Team USA, everything. So 75% from the left side, and 63% from the right side. Very, very scary right-handed contact rate there. 63%, very bad. In pro ball, so in 2025, from the left side, he was 68%, so pretty substantial dip. And from the right side, 64%, so more or less the same. But his swing, from the right side is totally different now. Where his hand setup is totally changed compared to college. So they have made changes to that. And I would say that, his left-handed contact rate is that dip is just consistent with the difference between college and pro stuff. I have some bust, concerns about Braden. I do think that James has him in the exact right place. where I value the things he mentioned, the athleticism, the tools, and the chance that things might click. He's still a developing player. He missed time with injury, etc. I still value that guy over McDougal, who I think like he's nasty, but probably just a reliever. Whereas like give me the certainty of Bonemer's hit tool ahead of, Braden when we're just like stacking the hitters apples to apples.
So two new faces that we're going to be seeing this year for the White Sox minor leagues, Eric, because they are just recent draftees. The first two picked for the White Sox from the 2025 draft, Billy Carlson and Jaden Fauske. What are you hoping to see from their first year as professionals?
Well, with Carlson, let's just see what the contact and strikeout rates like. When you play defense like Billy Carlson does, your floor as a player is really high. Like, even if Billy Carlson strikes out so much that he's only ever like a run into 15 homer a year, Gold Glove guy who hits ninth, he'll have pretty much matched like his draft position. If he hits for even like a below average, like merely below average, not so bad, but just like 40 grade hit tool guy, then he could be Willy Adames. Like, his track record of hitting in high school was pretty positive. This is just a guy with a long swing who I'm not really sure how he's going to handle pro velocity. Carson Williams, his trajectory might be pretty similar to what to expect from Billy Carlson, where it might take a while for the swing and miss stuff to get exposed in a real way, and Billy Carlson might become a top 100 prospect over the next 12 months because he just destroys lower level pitching enough and looks like an absolute stud on defense. When you can play an up the middle position like this, you can be a pretty marginal offensive player and still be like a 3-win guy. And so, with Carlson, and Carson Williams is different because Carson Williams, it's, can you see spin at all? And with Billy Carlson, it's, is your swing too long to deal with big league velocity? And so we might not actually know that for, another 2+ years once you start to see him face 93 plus mile an hour fastballs more regularly than he will in 2025 or 2026 rather. Still writing 2025 on my checks that we don't write anymore. And so that's the Billy Carlson variable is like, hey, what's the contact rate like overall and against fastball specifically? And then Fauske, it's, can he improve on defense, or is he just going to be, a first baseman or left fielder or something like that? Can he actually catch? Can we expect to see any improvement like that in year one? That might be asking a lot. And then the second thing for him is it a special hit tool? Is it merely like a good hit tool? Definitely like a hit tool oriented high school prospect for sure. Like one of the better pure hitters from his high school class. But is it like a 7 hit tool, or is it like, a 55? If it's a 7, well, then like how much power he develops doesn't matter as much. And whether he can catch or not doesn't matter as much. He'll just have enough bat to ball ability that he'll be a good big leaguer, regardless of how some of that stuff turns out. And so, that's the thing that I think we're going to learn more about in pro season number 1. Then I think we'll be able to see that with him quicker than we can actually learn whether Carlson has, a big enough hole in his swing that it's a problem. Like Fauske can hit right away, have like a 10-12% contact rate in A ball all year, something like that. Then we can go, oh, all right, like this is a real profile altering hit tool this guy has, and some of the other stuff now we can sort of ignore.
James, with Fauske, is catching the plan from a White Sox perspective, or will they just put him straight to the outfield?
No, he's outfield only at this point, so it'd be okay. There's talk of playing him in center, which it seems like a little, hey, let's give him a shot there trajectory than a long-term projection. But yeah, how much of it is like, he terms it as like he wanted to focus on his offense. There was also obviously a shoulder injury in there at one point that limited his throwing, and whether or not those two priorities kind of blended towards this projection, it seems like it's offense only at this point. Or not offense, outfield only, not offense only, ideally.
Again, you could read as far as the top 37 prospect all of the breakdowns on fangraphs.com. But the last question that I have for both of you, and James, I'll start with you. Is there a particular White Sox prospect that you feel more optimistic than others in the industry?
Well, Opera and McDougal to start.
Well, yeah, other than Opera, I should preface. Yeah, you are the conductor of the Opera train.
That I'm more I feel like the optimism you probably saw. I'm like, I mean, I guess an easy answer is like, we're both, probably high on Aldrin Batista more than a little bit. He's probably appeared on a lot of lists. And, we're all set to touchdown dance about it last year. And then he had a stress fracture, like his first outing, and, I want to say over 4 months. And when he came back at the end of the season, didn't really look like himself that much. His velo was still a bit down and the strike throwing wasn't quite there, but looked like a really nice story for them to kind of get someone who looks like a nice, like, strike throwing back end starter. Not so much stable because he hasn't pitched in even AA yet at this point, but the profile, the strengths there, like strikes, throws different speeds, nice little slot that lets his sinker play pretty well. Having someone who looked like a safer starter, I think, put him in a nice little middle section between like the top, the 50 FV guys and a lot of arms that are either like, hey, throws tons of strike, but it's below average major league stuff, or like, here's some guy who throw hard that we'll have to keep an eye on, but it doesn't look like a starter. So I thought he was a little bit of providing that medium tier depth of their system, but it's kind of dependent on how he looks coming back from injury after basically a lost year last season. He won like a strength conditioning award for pitching for the entire like system going into 2025. Like, he's in great shape. You can kind of see him like adding a little strength. So ideally, you hope someone like that bounces back from injury as well as anyone, but it's kind of a black box until we see him in spring. I think, just to note, I feel like I look lower on like George Walco than others, because despite thinking like that, both like watching him and talking to him was like very enjoyable. Like, he's a very hard worker who thinks a lot about like what he's dealing with his game, and I think he's like a fundamentally good pick because he's like the draft version of why like Murakami is a good signing of like,
yes,
you're not gonna get like this outlier tool into your system unless you kind of find little opportunities to take shots like this. So like, even if he doesn't work out, I think it's, it was a kind of a good idea. I just putting a 40 on him after like his second year in low A and like not really getting into the power so much, and like he was able to reduce strikeouts, but I don't feel like he still makes contact with spin a whole lot better. More reflects like that I think this is still like a little bit boomer bust outcome than like saying like this. For me, putting him at a 40 would be kind of hedging between, when I really don't think it's a kind of a hedge situation where he comes out and he's a useful bench player. It's like, does this like outlier alien power get into games enough where he's probably, you want him in all the time, or is it just not really work and you don't really see him like maybe even, get above AA? It's just an unknown, and I wanted to give him a grade that reflects that. But in terms of that, it winds up like sending him a little bit like all the way down the list in a way where like, oh, I think this guy stinks, where it's more like it's just too unknown at this point.
How about you, Eric? Is there someone that you're more optimistic than others within the White Sox farm system?
I like some of the arms who I think will be up this year. Like, I like Duncan Davitt and I like Ben Peoples. I think both of those guys throughout the year are going to feel like, hey, there are pieces entrenched for the next handful of years as guys who you can win with. Peoples, Peoples is a good breaking ball. I just think that that's going to play in the bullpen fine. But Duncan Davitt and Jedickson Paez, like Jedickson Paez for me is like what people think of the Fish and the Grateful Dead. Like, that's my guy. Like, people care about Fish and the Grateful Dead is Jedickson Paez to me. And I just think that Davitt and Paez both have like freaky command kind of, and they might not be the type of player who you're psyched, if you're the Phillies, like, you're not going to hand the ball to Duncan Davitt in game 4 of the NLCS or something like that. But to have that guy on your pitching staff over the course of the whole season for the next, 3, 5, 6 seasons, I think is pretty useful. I think that's super true of Davitt, who is just big and sturdy and throws strikes, and it just looks so easy to him. And then Paez is the one where there's a little bit more variability, where he's like funky in a way that maybe he has more ceiling than that. His command is pretty special. And 2 years ago, his secondary stuff looked special too. And then, injuries last year, just didn't really pitch, never looked quite the same. If you get the 2024 version of Jettix and Paez, like that's a steal for the long haul. So I think those couple of guys, I just like their command enough to think that like one of them might have 7 command in a way that makes their profile really sing, like Shane Bieber's did at peak or something like that, where you go, yeah, this stuff is just all right. But when you have 8 command, you get to be a 3-win starter. So, either one of those guys wouldn't surprise me if just based on how many strikes they throw that they punch above their weight a little bit.
Well, go to FanGraphs.com to read the full report, the top 37 White Sox prospects, written by James Fegan and, of course, Eric Longenhagen as well. And you can check out all their top prospect readings. And with the Chicago White Sox having the number 1 pick in the 2026 MLB draft, I am sure we'll be touching base with you throughout the prep and college seasons, Eric. But thank you so much for coming back on the Sox Machine podcast.
Thanks for having me, Josh. See you guys.
That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Again, huge thank you to Eric Longenhagen for joining the show. And, of course, James Fegan, which, again, you can read his work always on SoxMachine.com. And he's also helping out FanGraphs this upcoming year when it comes to prospect coverage. So you can read James's work on FanGraphs.com, too. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to the show and watch our videos on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. We're on social media on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. We are on Blue Sky. You can follow us there simply at SoxMachine.com. James is jrfegan.soxmachine.com. I am josh.soxmachine.com. If you enjoy our work with full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, it's a great time to sign up for a subscription now. With SoxFest coming up, we'll be there. Spring training, we're finalizing all the trip details for James to be down in Glendale, Arizona. In late February, early March, I will be in Texas to see top draft prospects Rock Chalowski and Grady Emerson. Those trips and that type of coverage doesn't happen without our subscribers. So if you are not a subscriber, you can sign up. Monthly plans start at $5. We do have annual subscriptions that that provide additional discounts as well. We have additional tiers of support. We have some spots open in our Veterans Committee. So if you want direct access to both Jim and James and be part of the group text in which James shares additional insight from the Chicago White Sox clubhouse, you can sign up at SoxMachine.com/products. Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.